There's a number where side income stops being a hobby and starts being something else. It's not the first dollar. It's not the first 1,000 total. It's the first time your side income consistently brings in $500 in a single month. And not just 1 month, multiple months in a row, 3, 6, 12 months of 500 without a major dip. That consistency is the actual threshold. A single $500 month proves nothing structural. 12 $500 months in a row proves the system exists. $500 a month is $6,000 a year. That's by itself not life-changing. But the threshold isn't about the money. It's about what consistent $500 a month actually proves about you and what you built. Below 500, side income is intermittent. You earn a little, then nothing, then a little again. The pattern is sporadic enough that you can't really plan around it. At 500 a month, consistently, something different is happening. You've crossed from random transactions into something that resembles a real system, and that system is what changes everything that comes after. Most financial advice will tell you to chase bigger numbers. 10,000, 20,000, the dramatic side income that quits the job. But here's the thing they're missing. The hard part isn't reaching 20,000. The hard part is reaching 500 consistently. Once you've done that, the rest is mostly repetition and refinement. 500 a month, every month, is the structural threshold that separates people who have a side hustle from people who build something that works, and those are completely different categories. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, side income systems, and why a relatively modest monthly number is actually the most important threshold in the entire side income game. If you're someone who actually wants to understand what changes when you hit consistent 500 a month, instead of chasing imaginary larger numbers, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up reframing how you think about your own progress. I'll be honest about why I'm so focused on this specific number. Most YouTube content about side income focuses on the dramatic numbers. 10,000 a month, quitting your job, going viral. That content sells, but it sets the wrong target. The vast majority of people who try side income never get past the first 100 a month. Talking about 10,000 is frankly not useful for them. 500 is the smallest number that's both achievable and structurally meaningful. It's the right target for almost everyone reading this. Hit 500 consistently before you even think about anything larger. Let's set the context first. According to Bankrate's 2025 survey, the median side hustler earns just $200 per month. That means half of all side hustlers in America earn less than that. About 10% of side hustlers earn over $1,000 a month. The space between 200 and 1,000 is where the entire transformation actually happens. And the midpoint of that space, 500 a month, is where the math, the psychology, and the structure all line up. It's the smallest amount that proves the system actually works. The gap from 200 to 500 looks small in absolute terms. $300 more per month. But it's actually the most important gap in side income because of what crossing it requires. Getting from 0 to 200 can happen with intermittent effort. Lucky breaks, one-off projects. Above 200, that approach stops working. You have to have something structural that produces that structural shift is what makes 500 different from 200. The dollar gap is small, but the structural gap is enormous. Let me explain why 500 a month specifically is the threshold worth focusing on. The reasons split into 3 categories: mathematical, psychological, and structural. They all converge on the same number, which is part of what makes it so meaningful. The first reason is mathematical. 500 a month covers a meaningful portion of a real American household's discretionary spending. It can fund the Roth IRA contribution, which is a retirement account where you pay taxes now so you don't pay them later with money left over. It can cover a small monthly bill category entirely, a streaming budget, a modest grocery upgrade, a meaningful chunk of your child's activity costs. The first real category where your side income takes over. At 200 a month, side income is play money. It buys a few coffees or a dinner. At 500, it starts replacing decisions you used to make about your salary money. Think about what that replacement actually feels like. A coffee that used to feel like a small budget hit now just feels free. A small unexpected expense that used to spike your stress now barely registers. The financial buffer is small but real. The second reason is psychological. 500 a month, 12 months in a row, is what your brain accepts as real income. Below that, it feels like a fluke. Above that, your brain incorporates it into how you see yourself financially. At 300 a month, you still talk about your side hustle as something you're trying. At 500, you talk about it as something you do. The language shift reflects an underlying identity shift. That identity shift is honestly worth more than the dollar amount itself, because identity drives every subsequent decision. The third reason 500 matters is that it represents the smallest sustainable system. Below 500, you can earn money sporadically without much structure. Above 500, you almost certainly have to have some kind of repeatable process. 500 a month means you have customers who come back, or a platform where you've established consistency, or a service that has steady demand. The dollar amount forces the structure into existence, and once the structure exists, scaling becomes a completely different problem from starting. Going from 500 to 1,000 is much easier than going from 0 to 500. The hard work is already done. The structure is the asset. The dollar amount is just evidence of it. Most people focus on the dollars, but the structure is what's actually valuable. The Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks multiple job holders, meaning people working 2 or more separate jobs. In November 2025, BLS recorded 9.3 million Americans with multiple jobs, the highest number ever recorded since they began tracking in 1994, 5.7% of the workforce, the highest share in 25 years. But that data captures the wrong population. Multiple job holders are mostly people working a literal second job for hourly wages. That's not the same thing as building a side income that compounds and grows over time. The people who hit consistent 500 a month through their own work. Freelancing, consulting, small businesses are statistically rarer and structurally different from people working a second job. A second hourly job has a hard ceiling. You can only work so many hours per week before you collapse. A built side income has no hard ceiling. It can grow without requiring more hours. That difference is why hitting 500 through your own structure matters more than hitting 500 through more hours. The first kind compounds, the second kind doesn't. This video is mostly about the first kind, the kind that has growth potential built into the structure itself, not just into how many hours you're willing to grind. The second kind, the hourly job kind, still has value. It can stabilize a household in a tough year, but it doesn't lead to the structural transformation we're talking about. For that, you need a system, something that produces with or without your active hours. And 500 a month consistently is the smallest signal that you've built one. Now let me walk you through specifically what changes the month you hit consistent 500, because the shifts are subtle but real, and they accumulate over time. The first thing that changes is your relationship with the dollar amount of your salary. Before consistent side income, your salary is the entire universe of your income. After 500 a month consistently, your salary is roughly 90% of your income, depending on your wage level. 90% is still most of it, but 10% coming from somewhere else completely changes how the 90 feels. The 90 stops being everything. It becomes the dominant share, not the only share. That distinction matters more than the math suggests. Your nervous system can sense the difference between 100% dependency and 90% dependency. The chronic stress drops noticeably. The second thing that changes is how you think about time outside your job. Before 500 a month, the time you spent on side work felt speculative. Maybe it would pay off. Maybe it wouldn't. After 500 a month consistently, that time feels productive in a measurable way. Each hour now has a predictable return. You stop wondering if you're wasting your effort. That clarity is, what makes people actually keep going. Most people quit side hustles because they stop believing the effort connects to anything. At 500 a month, the connection becomes undeniable. And once the connection is undeniable, the hours start to feel different. They feel earned rather than gambled. The whole quality of your free time shifts when the work in it has a known return. The third thing that changes is your tolerance for low quality clients or customers. When you're earning 200 a month, every client matters. You take what comes. You don't push back. At 500 a month consistently, you can afford to be selective. The marginal client who makes your life miserable isn't worth keeping. You can fire them and you can replace them because your system is already producing. That selectivity quality changes your overall experience of the side income. The work becomes more enjoyable because you're filtering for clients you actually like working with. The whole thing gets more sustainable, not less. Burnout in side hustles usually comes from working with bad clients you can't afford to lose. At $500 a month, you can afford to lose them. That alone extends how long you can keep building before burning out. The fourth thing that changes is how your day job feels. Before consistent side income, your day job is the thing that keeps you alive. After consistent $500 a month, your day job is still the dominant income, but it's no longer the only one. That small change reorganizes how every workplace conversation lands. The annoying meeting, the unreasonable requests, the performance review, they all feel less existential than before. The day job doesn't have to be bad for this shift to happen. Even a good job feels different when it's not your entire economic identity. Calmer, more chosen. Your coworkers might notice the shift before you do. You handle stressful situations more calmly. You decline unreasonable requests without flinching. The change is internal, but it shows externally. But here's the part most people completely miss, and it might be the most important point in this entire video. $500 a month isn't a destination. It's a launch pad, and the value of the launch pad isn't in the dollar amount. It's in what it lets you do next. Once you have consistent $500 a month, two things become possible that weren't before. First, you can invest in growing the side income. Tools, help, better marketing, skills. The system has cash flow now, so you can below 500, every dollar spent on growing your side income feels like a personal sacrifice. Above 500, those investments can come from the side income itself. The business funds its own growth. That self-funding is like the moment a side hustle becomes a real business in any meaningful sense. The business pays for its own next stage. You stop subsidizing it from your salary. Second, you can experiment without risking your survival. You can try a new offering, test a new market, refine your pricing. If the experiment fails, the system still produces baseline income. You're not betting the farm. That experimentation freedom is what turns $500 a month into $1,000, and $1,000 into $3,000, and $3,000 into $10,000. The path runs through the freedom to test things. Without that freedom, you keep doing the one thing that works at the small scale. You can't try anything different because failure would mean zero income. The 500 buffer is what lets you take small bets without catastrophic downside. That's the whole reason 500 matters more than people realize. It's not the dollar amount that's transformative. It's the optionality that comes with it. The ability to try things without betting your survival. And here's the deeper thing about the 500 threshold. It changes who you can compare yourself to. Below 500, you compare yourself to people who are mostly just talking about side income, Twitter threads, YouTube videos, online courses. The conversation is full of theory and not much execution. Above 500, you can compare yourself to people who actually built something. Their advice is different. Their networks are different. The information available to you upgrades dramatically. You start being able to ask serious questions of serious people because they recognize you as someone who built something real. The 500 mark is basically the entry ticket to a higher level of conversation about side income. That access alone, before you ever earn another dollar, is worth more than the side income itself. The people you can now talk to know things the YouTube videos can't teach. They've solved problems you haven't hit yet. They know which paths look promising and end in dead ends. They can save you years of trial and error if you can get into their orbit. Look, here's the honest version of all of this. $500 a month sounds modest. It is modest in absolute terms, but it's the smallest amount that proves the system actually works and unlocks the next level of growth. You don't need to chase $10,000 a month. You need to nail $500 a month consistently, every month, for at least 6 months in a row. Once you've done that, you've earned the right to think bigger. Before that, thinking bigger is just fantasy. You're imagining a destination without knowing if the path exists. Once you've hit consistent 500, You know the path exists. You walked it. The math doesn't care that 500 sounds small. The math only cares whether you cross the threshold that turns sporadic income into a real system. You're not failing if you're nowhere near 500 yet. The first 100 is harder than the next 400 combined. Almost everyone gets stuck before they get to a consistent 200. But if you've started even small, understand what you're building toward. Not just a number, a structural threshold that unlocks everything that comes after it. And if you've already crossed it, recognize what you actually have. Not just an extra income stream, a working system that can be invested in, scaled, and turned into something far bigger than the current dollar amount suggests. Don't underestimate what you built. The hardest part is already done. Most people never get here. The next steps from this point are different from what got you here. They involve scaling, hiring, productizing, and reinvent. That's a different skill set, but a better problem to have than the one you started with. Your future self, the one who either built past 500 or never did, is counting on the consistent work you do this year. Trust me, they'll thank you for crossing the smallest meaningful threshold long before the dollar amounts ever felt impressive.